Alright guys, that's video for the busy bee. Then during class we'll do a few more reviews and maybe some flowcharts, but this is the last main page of information, and it is on page 12 in the notes. Okay, so after we had pyruvic acid breakdown, an acetyl group was carried to the next step by coenzyme A, so acetyl-CoA. And basically there's two more steps to aerobic respiration. Okay, the first is the Krebs cycle, or citric acid cycle, and basically that's where you completely oxidize the glucose. You take that acetyl group and now you break that last bond, and what you're going to produce during this step, you're going to get carbon dioxide. So basically the CoA comes off, your acetyl group splits, and you get two carbon dioxides. Now, when that all happens, you lose some hydrogen, so you actually produce a molecule of NADH2, and for the first time since earlier, we're talking about FADH2. So FAD is involved here as well. So when you split that acetyl group into the carbon dioxide, the hydrogens come off, so you get two carbon dioxides, you get a molecule of NADH2, FADH2, and when you are breaking off those bonds, you also get 4-ATP. Okay, now your CO2, you just breathe off. So all of the carbon that was originally part of that glucose is now gone, and you breathe all of that out. So you produce two CO2 here, and then you also produced a CO2 during pyruvic acid breakdown. Okay, so each pyruvate, which was 3 carbons, each of them is going to go through pyruvic acid breakdown, and that gives off each pyruvate gives off 1 carbon dioxide there, and then the acetyl group's what's left, and that gets split during the Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. Okay, so carbon's the only thing left. Now, during all of these processes, the only other thing that we have left, carbon's gone, oxygen's gone. The only other thing that we have left from all of this is all of that hydrogen that got picked up during all of the other phases. Okay, because there were many different places where we had NADH2s formed and NADHs formed, and FADH2, especially right here, we had that form. So the very last thing then that we do, all of the NADs and FADs travel to what we call the electron transport chain. Okay, ETC for short, electron transport chain. And basically it's when these guys become oxidized, and there's a bunch of different steps in here. There's like 3 or 4 different, or maybe even more, intermediate compounds. You don't need to know all that. You just need to know kind of what happens, the end result. Okay, there's also a bunch of things that happen here, but again, you don't really need to know all that. You just need to know the end result. So the end result is that NADH2 and FADH2 are going to bring all those hydrogens, drop them off. When they do that, there's a bunch, and every time you break off a hydrogen, you release a little bit of energy. That energy is going to be stored by your ADP being phosphorylated into ATP. And this is where this is basically what keeps us alive. This is where 30 ATP are made. So from that one glucose, from the hydrogen that came off, 30 ATP are made during the electron transport chain. Okay, so you can kind of see in your notes during Krebs cycle, you can kind of see what happens. You have your acetyl-CoA, you produce 4 ATP, and you produce an NADH2 and an FADH2. Okay, and then you produce 2 carbon dioxides. They get breathed off. That's it. Okay, that's all for your carbon and oxygens. And then the oxygen that you breathe in, that's used as the final hydrogen acceptor during aerobic. You may want to make a note of that. Oxygen is the final hydrogen acceptor of aerobic respiration. And basically during that whole process, you actually produce 30 ATP. Okay, in your notes, electron transport chain says consists of a series oxidation reduction reactions. High energy hydrogen, we call these high energy hydrogen because there's a lot of energy in these bonds as they attach to the NADs and FADs. So we call them high energy hydrogen. They're converted into low energy hydrogen, and then they attach to that oxygen. Okay, and 30 ATP are there. So 30 ATP get made there. You phosphorylate 30 ADPs and get 30 ATPs. Okay, and when the hydrogen attached to the oxygen, you get water molecules. So this is where you get your water that you breathe off. So most of your CO2 that you breathe off comes here and from pyruvic acid breakdown. Actually, all of it comes from Krebs and pyruvic acid breakdown, and your water that you breathe off comes from here, comes from the electron transport chain. Okay, so you can kind of see in the notes there the summary chart for aerobic completely. You start with pyruvate, you do pyruvic acid breakdown to get acetyl-CoA, then you do the Krebs cycle, and then you do the ETC. Okay, and during acetyl-CoA, it's not really on there, but you can add that. You produce a CO2. You don't produce any during pyruvic acid breakdown. You actually don't produce any ATP though. You just produce for that one, you just produce an NADH and a CO2. Okay, but then during Krebs, you actually produce 4 ATP, FADH2, NADH2, and your 2 carbon dioxides, and then all of those hydrogen that we talked about earlier, they have to be dropped off somewhere, and then your NAD and FAD are going to go back and pick up more for another glucose molecule to continue with respiration. Your CO2, by the way, at this point, after CO2 drops off the not CO2, sorry, your CoA is what I'm trying to say here. After your acetyl group gets dropped off, the CoA can go back to another pyruvate and basically help with pyruvic acid breakdown. Okay, so that's basically the gist of this entire unit. At the very bottom of the paper, it says low energy hydrogen plus O2 give you, it got cut off there, H2O. Okay, page 13 is just kind of summary, so you might want to look over that. And then when I see you guys on Tuesday, we'll make a few more flowcharts for the different steps, and we'll focus on some reviews then. All right. So if you do have any questions, make sure you write them down so that we can talk about them when I get back on Tuesday. And good luck studying, and I'd probably start working on your reviews now so that you're good to go for your test. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.